I just want to acknowledge the fact that for the most part, the Latino Mexican American community in this case, they don't like tax dodgers, draft dodgers, but they do love the LA Dodgers. And you're listening to the Brown Perspective. Here is your host, Eduardo, and I'm joined by El Mero Mero RO.
¿Cómo estamos?
Bien, aquí estamos 17 días antes de las elecciones, 17 days before the elections. So we know that all of us just want this 2 weeks to pass so we know what the hell is next.
Getting close.
It's getting close, and obviously there's a lot is at stake. And here at the Brown Perspective, we always talked about the importance of representation. In some ways, the response of the Latino community with the current president is to be expected. I think let's think about the fact that he launched his presidential campaign criticizing Mexicans and Latinos, saying that we were criminals, that we were rapists, and all of these things. So obviously he's ridden the xenophobic wave to get to where he's at. So as it comes time for his reelection, I think a lot of people in the community are stepping up and encouraging other to votes. And so we have our abuelito, which I some ways I feel like Edward James Olmos es el abuelito de todos. Y siempre que pienso en él, quiero decir, con ganas. Stand Up and Deliver, one of the films that obviously put him on the map and also put a lot of the history here in LA, right? So a lot of the history in East Los, Chicano politics. But anyways, as you can tell, I think is a pretty cool development, but wanted to kind of get your thoughts and have this discussion about what this represents.
Yeah, well, let's play this video here. He's coming out, taking a side and reaching out to the community. And at the very end, because I will play the entire clip, at the very end, it tells you who is sponsoring this video. So I do want to talk a bit about that as well, because it's the Lincoln Project. And this organization that was formed last year, but its ideology, its membership, its founders are Republican. So you see this, you start to see this coalition of never Trump Republicans trying to side with the never Trump Democrats, or basically the entire Democratic Party.
Make sure you turn on the volume.
Yeah. I'll do this, make sure it's not too high.
Órale. We are Latino men and women in business, and we're proud to be part of the greatest country on the earth, the United States of these Americas. We pay our taxes, vato. We serve our military, our familias, and our communities. We don't dodge trabajo duro. We don't dodge the military, and we don't dodge taxes. So why would we vote for a tax dodger, a draft dodger?
Let me pause it right there. I just wanted to say the way that he's speaking, it's like he's dropping some hardcore lyrics. You could put that into a corrido almost.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think it's almost like stand-up poetry. But I just want to acknowledge the fact that for the most part, the Latino Mexican American community in this case, they don't like tax dodgers, draft dodgers, but they do love the LA Dodgers.
Yeah,
Los
right.
Dodgers. Los esquivadores de Los Ángeles.
And a man with no regards for our familias. This election, we're dodging you, pinche Trump. ¿Qué nos crees? Pendejos. Pues órale.
I was going to mention earlier that Edward James Olmos, he sure does do a good impersonation of a homie, doesn't he? But then I realized he's probably the original one. He's just doing himself. He's just being Edward James Olmos, and a lot of the stereotypes come from his movies.
Yeah, and that he's played, and the fact that at the end he kind of switches to Spanish to just
Yeah.
because I think that's one of the great fears about this country in Spanish. Like, oh, I don't understand what they're telling me, but it's 2020. You should know a little bit of Spanish by now. You've been in our continent for 528 years, so I think it's time for you to learn the language of the continent. Thank you.
And I'm glad that he's back actually, because the lingo that he uses, it's fallen out of fashion for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
The gang culture of the 90s is not as prevalent now as it used to be. But yet you still find movies from directors that have a stereotype of the Mexican American community, and they use that same lingo. Hey, homie, what's up, ese? What's the other word that they use? The chale ese. That's not as common as it used to be, yet they still use it because that's just a stereotype. And now here's Edward James Olmos reinforcing that that's still around.
That's
now,
right.
for the next, thank you. So this is more of like a little rant against Edward James Olmos here. Thank you for giving us another 20 or 30 years of that same language being spoken in the movies for the next 20 to 30 years.
It doesn't go away, ese.
It was going away, but then he came back and he used it.
Los pendejos no saben.
Chale,
Con
ese.
ganas.
Yeah. Man, he as you were in the beginning when you were talking about him, his legacy, everything that he has done or what he represents to the Latino community. Yeah, I think it's huge. The Stand and Deliver movie, the American Me movie from, I think it was the early 90s that came out. And then is
Selena. Did he play Selena?
He was her father.
Her father, yeah.
I don't think he played Selena, but that would have been a very forward-thinking movie if they would have cast Edward James Olmos as Selena.
No, what I meant was that he was also in Selena.
Yeah.
Stop making fun of my English, Herreo. My English is not very good looking.
No, I wasn't
at times,
making
okay?
fun of your English. It was a
Selena.
mix-up. Yeah.
The Lincoln Project is responsible.
There we go. The Lincoln Project. They've come out in full force with all these ads against Trump, by the way.
Yes, they're like you said, they're a group that of disenchanted Republicans that are obviously alluding to going back to the party, the Republican Party of Lincoln, and so obviously great campaign. But it's interesting. I know you have a lot to say, but I know with some of my political friends, what I hear is that it's great to see this type of advertisement because it kind of gets to the root, at least particularly for the Latino electorate and specifically for the Mexican American electorate. But also the sad fact that the Democrats are not the one that are doing this, right? So like it took a Republican group to do this type of video to incorporate our people, even though the Democratic Party in this particular campaign also has so many resources, and they have not appeared to have invested in reaching out the Latino vote.
Right, because they take the Latino community for granted because they expect to receive our vote. So
Yes.
in that sense, they don't have to try very hard because who else are we going to vote for? And that's the problem with everyone broadcasting or signaling that they were going to give the Democrats their vote as soon as Bernie dropped out of the race, or as soon as Elizabeth Warren was out, no more progressives, and you have nothing but Biden left. And so everyone automatically voter shaming anyone else that says we don't want to vote for Biden. We're gonna vote third party.
Voting shaming. Ooh, first time I hear that.
If you pledge your allegiance to them so early on, then what motivation are they gonna have to give you anything? And the Lincoln Project, obviously, I have my concern with the fact that they see an opportunity to ally themselves with the Democrats and to try to pick up that support, because again they're trying to all come together around this idea of never Trump. That's what unites all of them. But let's not forget that the Lincoln Project, after all, is funded by Republicans. They're the ones that under any other circumstances would be choosing policies, supporting candidates like Bush and Cheney that are completely opposite of what the Democrats are supposed to stand for. This is a perfect example of what's the saying, the politics makes strange bedfellows.
Mm-hmm. No, but I think you can also make the argument that they're trying to be kind of Reagan Republicans, and I know that's problematic to Latinos for a number of things because of what Reagan stood for what he did in Central America,
And the Contra,
which created so many,
Iran-Contra,
with the
supported
Iran-Contra.
apartheid in South Africa, trickle-down economics, the beginnings of what has now morphed into the distorted healthcare system that we have. So yeah, there's a lot of issues with Reagan.
and well, he was the president that did the last amnesty,
Yeah, and in that
and a
regard,
lot
yeah.
of undocumented people were able to adjust their status because of the 1986 immigration bill.
Yes. So what's your take on aligning with the Lincoln Project Republicans if it means that we're coming together to get Trump out of office and then work together now and fight later? Is that the
Yes, part of
strategy?
it, because politics at heart is about interest and not, realizing that, hey, we can be friends, but when our interests are not aligned, I have to protect my interest, and we can work together when our interests are aligned together. But I think, first of all, we need to acknowledge that there are Republican Latinos, and I think Republican Latinos because A, they're conservative socially because of our Catholic or Christian background. A lot of them are business owners, small business, paying taxes, or doing all these things. There's also the fact that a number of them are Cuban, and a lot of them also escaped socialist regimes in Cuba, Venezuela, Central America, and other parts. So I think they have this. They're Latinos who are conservatives because of a number of factors, and I think that a lot of them do. And I guess one of the religious issues now is the whole issue of abortion, right? There are some conservative Latinos who align with the Republican values. So I think we got to acknowledge that. And yes, and I think obviously they were having a hard time with this president because yes, he stands for their values and their ideology, but then he's also denigrating my community and he's talking bad about Mexicans. And I know he's saying this about Mexicans who he calls criminals, who he calls illegal, but that also impacts me and how I'm perceived. And that discrimination is real. So that's why I need to support an effort to try to get this person out of office.
Yeah, I personally know a few Latinos that have already cast their ballot for Trump just based on their religious issue.
Interesting.
Yeah, they've already filled it out and put it in the mail. So yeah, there's a lot of Latinos that lean conservative, and when it comes, there's single voter issues, religion, abortion is one of the main ones that I see in my community. But you're right with we've known for a long time that Miami, Florida has a huge Cuban population that has leaned Republican for a long time. I don't know if this ad is targeting Republican Latinos as much as it would be targeting what you would call liberals and then the progressives on the left. And I think they see an opportunity here to try to introduce themselves, introduce their brand of right conservatism or republicanism to this entire segment to say, hey, look, we're with you. We're against Trump. Let's work together to get him out of office. But then, right, they have ulterior motives, which is they probably think that they can once they put their brand out there, they can use that to then get Latinos to go into their side, into their camp, and start leaning more towards the Republicans. So that's the play that I see here with them. These guys, let's not forget, these guys are never Trump, but they're also never Bernie Sanders as well. That's how I see them. So in that sense, they don't speak to me. They don't speak to the millions out there that would want a more progressive candidate. But look, if you want to be practical, if the immediate goal is to get Trump out of the White House, because that's everyone understands that he's despicable. He's a lot worse than anyone else. He doesn't do any of the dog whistling that other Republicans do. A lot of, especially Republican candidates or elected officials do this, where they know that there's an anti-immigrant sentiment. They know that there's racism in their base. They do a lot of dog whistling. They don't come out and say it because they're politicians. They're career politicians. They know how to straddle that line to get a reaction out of their base without coming out and clearly saying Mexicans are criminals. Trump is just careless and crude, and that's why he says those things. Mm-hmm. So, but don't confuse the two into thinking that somehow makes Trump a lot worse in certain areas. Like in one regard, they're about the same. The problem with Trump saying that out loud is that now he validates it. Now he emboldens people. So that aspect, yes, Trump is terrible, but let's not pretend like there's night and day difference between Trump and these other politicians. Especially like someone like Biden, he's the architect of the crime bill in 1994. You listen to reporters like Chris Hedges, or ex-New York Times reporter. He works in prisons, and he tells you that most of the people in that prison that he teaches, he helps them get a high school diploma. Most of the people in that prison would not be there if it had not been for the 1994 crime bill that tore up a lot of families and destroyed and wreaked havoc in the communities. And Biden was bragging about that stuff even a few years ago, that he was the central chief architect of that.
You make good points. So thank you for, I think, differentiating, or I guess helping us see that the difference between a traditional politician. At first, I thought you were talking about a traditional Republican politician, but then you switch it up as well. But it's true. I think that's one of the differentiating factors. I think in some ways the president says what other people were afraid to say, and I think that's also a part of his appeal to those people who feel that way. But good points.
And one last thing regarding the Lincoln Project is their brand of republicanism, and to some extent the Democrats as well, that created the conditions that then gave us Trump. But they'll run away from that. They'll never admit that they're the ones that played a big role in the current situation in which we find ourselves. So I'm just putting this out there. I'm not telling people that you shouldn't work as hard as you can to get Trump out of office. I'm just saying that don't be fooled by these guys into thinking that they align with you on every single issue or that they're your friends. They just see an opportunity to work with you right now, but then eventually they may try to get you to swing over to their side. And so I think if someone is looking at this video and they want to align themselves with the Lincoln Project just momentarily to get Trump out of office, then that's fine, as long as afterwards you're aware that this group does not really represent you and they don't have your best interests at heart. All right.
Hey, he's not Bad Bunny. Bad Bunny's going to do that.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, congratulations, Bad Bunny, winning the Billboard Award, collaborating with my idol, my queen, mi reina, Evie Queen.
Nice.
And Nessie. For those of you who saw the Perreo Sola remix this week, maybe we'll do a little segment on that to give you some entertainment sugar. But we also tweeted it on our Brown Prospect TV account. So check out the video. But anything else you want to add?
I think he did a great job of communicating. He's definitely authentic. He gets out there, people listen to him. You know that you feel like he's talking to you. At first, I thought this was great, and then at the end, I saw that it was sponsored by the Lincoln Project. Oh yeah, I thought it was a bit of a downer, but
I also love the art. Like the back is like it's colorful. I don't know who the artist is, but you can tell because of the colors. You can tell it's Latino and also kind of like a mural, right? So it kind of takes you back to that mural, that Mexican essence, and some of it is also, I think, tied to the indigenous way, how the Aztecs and others kind of use paint to as part of their culture.
Yeah, it's a good message. Even at the end, when I saw that it was sponsored by the Lincoln Project, I thought, okay, look, let's just be practical here. That's what he's doing. I'm not going to criticize him. I wanted to talk about in the other segment that we're going to do. I wanted to talk about Ice Cube and the blowback that he's getting for working with the Trump administration. I'm not giving Edward James Olmos any heat for working with the Lincoln Project, and Latinos aren't. They shouldn't give Ice Cube any grief for working with the Trump administration for trying to bring about a positive change to the African American community. But I did want to have a separate discussion about that one. I wanted to wrap this one up.
Let's do it.
Thanks everyone for listening. If you like what you're hearing, don't forget to subscribe to The Brown Perspective on YouTube. We're also on Instagram and Twitter. Nos vemos.
Ciao.